Gender apartheid is a term used to describe the systemic oppression and discrimination of a specific group based on gender. The Malala Fund is set to host a roundtable public discussion tomorrow that will explore the subject matter and see if there's been any progress made to address this, or is there a regression. Activists, lawyers, civil society, global advocates are expected to form part of this discussion that looks at the impact of this structural oppression. Let's now speak to Gaisu Yari of the Afghan Human Rights and Women's Rights activist who's joining us this evening. Good evening to you and thank you so much for your time. Let's just start firstly with the significance of having this discussion at this time.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I think what's happening in Afghanistan in the past years, especially after the takeover of the Taliban in Afghanistan and the movement of the women of Afghanistan, which is a grassroots movement to highlight and reflect on what's happening in Afghanistan, is, I think, a moment and a time that we come together, we engage, and we discuss about the matter and how oppression and a systemic policy-oriented governance method is impacting women in Afghanistan, especially after August 2021. And that's what women of Afghanistan are advocating for. And that is actually, you mentioned the term gender apartheid. And I think that term by itself is uniting us together, women of Afghanistan, and they're reflecting in the global stage the demands and the need to address this structural, systemic oppression that is going on since August 2021 in Afghanistan. And I think this is vital for us, women of Afghanistan, to raise awareness, to discuss and share and learn, to basically highlight what is happening to women of Afghanistan is a gender apartheid.
And when you look at the situation, over time, especially just maybe say the last decade or so, what has been the impact, particularly of development when you look at young girls and women of this structural oppression?
Of course, I would like to let this scene by saying that what happens after August 2021, as we did have some developments and the women of Afghanistan led different movements and trying to advocate for their rights in the country. Let's also talk about the 1996 and 2001 and how the Taliban's policy impacted women in Afghanistan. And they did have that experience, in fact, right? But now the way it was handed over to the Taliban after August 2021, they started by setting up a system to have specific policies by giving different decrees. Imagine having over 100 decrees targeting women, both publicly and privately. I would like to give you an example. I think Afghanistan is the only country that girls after 6th grade cannot go to schools and cannot get education. Women cannot work. They are not part of the civil society. They are not part of the government, as they call themselves as a government. They cannot work with international NGOs. Women cannot travel by themselves, and women cannot even use their private homes. Their private homes are also targeted by these laws that are set up in the past years since August 2021 to control them, control their bodies, and basically, I think, erase half of the population going forward. I think the damage that already was persisted inside Afghanistan to the women of Afghanistan is already greater, and the consequences, I think, are going to be great looking forward in the future of Afghanistan and women and girls in that country. Everything is reversed. I'm not saying that during years in Afghanistan, me as an advocate, we have had struggles. We fight for our rights. That is an ongoing struggle that we do have. But I think the type of reversal structural process in Afghanistan, unfortunately, is so severe right now that there aren't any opportunities to even talk about, human rights, even talk about the values that we are fighting for and that existed in Afghanistan for years and decades.
You've done work, right, Gaisu, across Europe as well as North America and Pakistan, speaking to women, speaking to those who've been displaced, and just really speaking about the trauma of displacement in some of these cases. When you engage with these women over time, do you find that gender apartheid is just a concentrated issue in one part of the world, or is it spread across and it's an issue that needs global attention?
I think let me take you back to the kind of experiences that we have had since August 2021. So it did not impact only inside the country, it impacted globally, right? I think one of the beautiful movement that's coming out of that, I think, experience is that come together. I think the women of Afghanistan in the past years are the only group that are resisting against this apartheid regime inside Afghanistan. But I think it is a global matter, and I think the experiences of women across the world, I think, are defining that what is happening in Afghanistan by the Taliban are a systemic oppression. And we're pushing for these vocabularies, even the legality part of it in the international human rights ecosystem, that I think what's happening in Afghanistan and what women experience, for instance, you mentioned Pakistan, human rights defenders who actually experienced imprisonment inside Afghanistan, they're threatened to be killed. They had to leave that country. Again, that was also systematic toward them. And I think this, for us, it is a global matter. I think what is imposed, I would like to tell you that was imposed in Afghanistan for years is a product of that global north, perhaps, right? That are coming and telling us and saving us. Now we are dispersed after August 2021 and we're forgotten, right? We are coming, I think, back together, and we are trying to resist and shape that narrative that I think tells about our experiences, tells about the oppression that we have experienced, and also the grassroots mobilization that is happening to fight it back.
So just before I let you go, then briefly, what happens post the discussions you are set now to have with all the global leaders? What are you hoping then becomes the outcome?
Of course, I think the movement that we are looking forward, I think, is a global South right movement that needs to be led by the global South leaders. My experience, I engaged with so many experts, activists, especially yesterday in South Africa, and I did have the privilege of, I think, visiting the Constitutional Hill today. I think looking at how, for instance, South Africa dismantled a systematic oppression in this country, I think is what we are learning from. I think what we are trying to achieve is that to create that global South solidarity movement, that our experiences, what we experience in Afghanistan and what you experience in this country, I think the most important part of our experience in this country right now is that we are here to learn, we are here to share, we are here to get guidance, right? We are here to be led. We would love to get that global South leadership on our side to dismantle a system that God knows how long it's going to be continued in Afghanistan and the future of our beloved country.
All right, Gaisu, thank you so much for your time this evening. As you say, this is a cause for concern, and it should be one for the globe and not just, a specific country. But I appreciate your time this evening. That's Gaisu Yari, of the Afghan Human Rights and Women Rights activist.